What's up, everybody? Welcome back to White Sox Daily. Another week in the books. Getting closer to Christmas season. Hope everyone's having fantastic holidays out there. As the Chicago White Sox, now with winter meetings kind of in the rear view, uh, free agency kind of in full swing now. A lot of the big names still kind of taking phone calls, looking around. Not a great deal of big time news, but the White Sox have been making a couple of deals. We got a little bit of news to dive into here, and we'll just jump right into it, starting with a rumor that had kind of been batted around here for a couple of weeks now. The Chicago White Sox, it finally comes out. They have addressed the Red Sox interest in reacquiring Kyle Teel from them after obviously getting Teel in the Garrett Crochet deal not that long ago. White Sox have officially made their stance very clear. Chris Getz put the kibosh on it. He says absolutely no, and they have informed the Boston Red Sox, that there will be no deal for Kyle Teel. Kyle Teel will not be going anywhere. They have no interest in trading him. This isn't even like a Luis Robert situation where it's for the right price. No, just absolutely a no. Kyle Teel staying put. So Chris Getz obviously big fan of the big-time catching prospect we acquired from Boston. Had a fantastic start to his rookie campaign last year in Chicago. And Getz obviously very impressed with Teel, has informed him that there is no price at this time that we're looking for or that we're willing to part with him. Kyle Teel is set to be a Chicago White Sox catcher in 2026. Regardless of how Boston feels about trying to reacquire him. So that was very interesting news coming out of there. Obviously, the ex-top prospect for Boston hit 273 last year for Chicago. 8 home runs as well, considering that he only played about half the season for Chicago. Also managed to bat in 35 RBIs. So a guy that had a phenomenal showing offensively. He was also pretty stout behind the plate as well as an actual traditional defensive catcher. So you can definitely see where that prospect rating back when he was in Boston, where he was at the top of their minor league system for a long time, comes from. And Chicago, they've decided that they saw so much that they are absolutely unwilling to move him. And so they've informed the Boston Red Sox, not going to happen. And Kyle Teel will be staying put for the foreseeable future. They did manage to make one move, however, as well. So not just informing some guys that they're not going to be trading people. They also managed to sign a left-handed pitcher. We got our first lefty on the board for Chicago. We all knew that they were looking for some bullpen arms, that they were obviously the big thing they were looking for was high leverage guys. They wanted to bring in more guys that could come in 7th, 8th innings, tough situations, guys that could also eat up innings. That has been a priority since day one. The White Sox front office has been very forward about that, very public about that. And we've seen a slew of pitching signings right off the bat for Chicago. A lot of relief pitchers, a lot of guys to come out of the bullpen, eat up some innings. Right off the bat, it was a lot of right-handed pitchers. Hey, we got our first lefty here as Ryan Rollison signed off waivers from the Atlanta Braves, a guy that the Braves themselves only signed off waivers from the Baltimore Orioles 3 months ago. And he didn't last all that long. 3 weeks ago, sorry. So it really didn't last all that long with them. He played for Colorado last season. Then he bounced around this offseason, signed to a couple of different waivers. Made his major league debut last year for Colorado. 7.02 ERA, so obviously up there, but I mean, it was in Colorado. Let's all be entirely fair. A guy making his major league debut, and it's in Colorado with that Colorado Rockies defense behind him. And of course, just the Colorado atmosphere behind him. A guy that probably didn't get the fairest shake in the world, but obviously the stats are what they are, so something to look into there. Probably not someone that we're looking at as a major splash signing, but a guy with some intrigue. Obviously a career minor leaguer to this point, but did make his major league debut last year in the Chicago White Sox, interested in kind of the stuff that he brings. And of course, as we already mentioned, he's someone that throws left-handed, and they weren't making a whole great deal of noise in that department whatsoever to this point in the offseason, in free agency. So certainly a signing to keep an eye on going into spring training, a guy that should start off the year in the minor leagues. But you'd expect him to make his advancement up onto the actual White Sox roster as the season goes on. I would say probably look for about 2 months or so in. Ryan Rollison should be up in the Chicago lineups bullpen, in the Chicago White Sox bullpen, as a guy that should be eating some innings, maybe in some of those lower leverage situations as the season progresses. But yeah, Ryan Rollison ends up in Chicago. And a couple of other guys ended up in Chicago as well down in the minor league system, and one of them we are more than familiar with, Tim Elko, after being waived not that long ago, non-tendered right before the Rule 5 draft. Tim Elko is back, a guy that was expected to compete for some first base opportunities last year, ended up coming up, joining the White Sox major league roster for a number of weeks. Didn't really make the impact that some White Sox fans were hoping, but ended up, obviously, as we mentioned, getting non-tendered not that long ago. Now he's back, so Tim Elko may be a guy that will once again compete for some of the rotation there in the infield for the Chicago White Sox, a guy that could potentially still be in play as a long-term answer at first base. We'd need to see some stark improvement, of course, especially from the plate. A guy that showcases great power when he's up in the major leagues, but just not making very much contact with the ball otherwise. The other signing, Oliver Dunn, a guy who has played a lot of third and second base primarily, signing him from Milwaukee. Played the last 2 seasons for the Brewers, made 55 appearances. Lost a lot of his 2024 season to a back injury, so a majority of his playing time came just last year, where he didn't showcase a great deal of offense. Similar contact issues, hitting just 206, not slashing all that much better. His power numbers, not even to the degree that Tim Elko at least carries that with him. So Oliver Dunn, a guy that is going to start off down in the minor league system for the Chicago White Sox, not necessarily a guy that you should expect is going to make a big splash and make a quick rise up to the actual White Sox roster, but certainly a name now that they've added to their pantheon of minor league infielders here. So a guy that will certainly try to compete his way up. And then, of course, we all know the deal with Tim Elko, a guy that we're all familiar with, and a guy that we're all still hopeful has some of that potential. And if he can just start to make a little bit more consistent contact, is a guy that we could maybe look forward to seeing more utilized in that first base platoon as the Chicago White Sox still look for that long-term answer at that position. And finally, we'll wrap things up with another infielder here. MLB Pipeline put out its first mock draft here after the draft lottery assigned the picks to everyone. And of course, the big news, the Chicago White Sox getting that first overall pick. That's huge for them, but it doesn't just end in the first round. Obviously, another one is they have a very high pick in round 2. That would be second overall. And in the first mock draft that MLB Pipeline puts out after that has been confirmed, an interesting pick at number 42 overall. Sorry, at the top there of the second round is the 41st overall pick. They would have the Chicago White Sox drafting infielder Landon Thome, whose last name might seem familiar to many White Sox fans. He is the son of Jim Thome, 18 years old, attends Nazareth Academy in LaGrange Park, batted .442 his senior year last year, team best 6 home runs, 46 runs scored, 25 RBIs, over 1,000 on the OPS, 23 stolen bases, listed as the 42nd overall prospect on MLB.com's 2026 draft board, and the number 2 player in the state of Illinois. Obviously, Jim Thome, a guy that we all remember from that magical 2005 season. Would be a very interesting reunion to bring back the Thome family here to Chicago. And have his son here as a Chicago White Sox prospect that would hopefully be a guy that would be able to help us down the line. Obviously, many people linking infield to the White Sox with the first overall pick. Rock Chalosky, going to be a name that you're going to be hearing a lot, not only on this channel, but across Major League Baseball news outlets as they continue to talk draft and continue to talk what the White Sox plan to do first overall. And that'll do it for today's news here on White Sox Daily. I've been Aaron Feely, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow.